Now to our special report on the trade in drugs, guns and people over the Torres Strait between Papua New Guinea and Australia. With increasing diplomatic tensions over West Papuan asylum seekers, our story tonight sets the scene of the frontier towns to our near north and the close proximity that makes it so easy for smugglers to operate. The men who work that illegal trade, dodgy boat owners and criminals, and those who know how they operate all agree the border is porous and the surveillance sporadic. And even worse, they allege corrupt officials make their illegal trade even easier. Well, as you saw earlier, some of those allegations have come from a serving member of Papua New Guinea's Defence Intelligence Unit. On behalf of other serving defence personnel, he spoke to freelance journalist Ben Bohane, who's been reporting from the region for more than 10 years, working on special assignment with the ABC's investigative unit. Bohane travelled to PNG to put together this report, sometimes filming covertly to gain access to the criminal networks involved. The producer was Renata Gombach.
When 43 Papuan asylum seekers came ashore at Cape York in January, they didn't simply set off a diplomatic incident. They also exposed the fact that Australia's maritime border in the Torres Strait is wide open. With the right contacts and a fast enough boat, mainland Australia is less than a day away for anyone in Papua New Guinea or Indonesia who really wants to get here illegally. The border is so porous that a member of Papua New Guinea's Defence Force Intelligence Service has felt compelled to speak out about inaction on border security by both Canberra and Port Moresby. He makes some serious allegations.
Yes, the Australians are neglecting PNG. People are being smuggled through Indonesia into Australia. The border has become a blind spot by both governments of Papua New Guinea and Australia.
For Australians accustomed to thinking that we're a continent far removed from Asia and the Pacific, a trip to our northern border with Papua New Guinea demonstrates otherwise. This might look like just another stretch of tropical coastline in the Pacific, but in fact we're at the intersection of an entire region. To my right is Saibai Island, part of the Torres Strait group of islands which are Australian. To my left is the mainland of Papua New Guinea. And if we go further down this coastline, probably not much more than 100 kilometres, we find ourselves in Indonesia. This is the intersection of Asia and the Pacific. I'd come to PNG to discover just how vulnerable Australia's northern maritime border has become. And to find out the extent of the illegal cross-border trade, I knew the best place to start investigating was right here, among my rascal contacts in the settlements of Port Moresby.
Yes, so you're in Daru.
Al spent a decade trading guns for drugs across Torres Strait.
Migolo lo Torres Island lo Saibai, come down lo Yamalan, come down the simple. Me come round lap, close to the test island is simple. So me round lap, Salimul drug number lo month no me come back.
So we got one network where Hemigo lo Daru.
Yeah, I'm going one plan network is taken. So months ago na, me plus a goal hap all brother section me plus goal hap set so was interrelation bro customary. Or border coast. But watch, coast watch, also stop. So me plus a goal, time lo me play. So me play looking Muslim. And me na me play lo go, me plus a go.
And lo side lo Australian customs, na immigration, na federal police. You think him stop inside this plan network or something?
I'm a workman stop inside this network. So workman also buy more. So workman blow or drug dealers buy more customs.
So think blue, you think also all official blow Australia, I mean corrupt?
I'm corrupt. Australia I'm corrupt because the immigration blow are more corrupt. Or like him Sandina too. Or like him drug told back him. I'm not thinking I'm no good man or good plan man. I'm not thinking this. I'm paying him finish. I'm paying a large amount of cash now, bago.
Many of these illegal trips start here, in Daru, located in Papua New Guinea's western province. It's not exactly on the tourist trail, and it's certainly not a place you want to linger. Some call it a smuggler's paradise. Daru is a classic border town. The local economy here is based on two things: fishing and smuggling. Ganja comes down from the highlands, and from here it's taken by boat down to Torres Strait. And in Torres Strait it's exchanged for weapons. Now this cross-border trade has been going on for 20 or 30 years. It's nothing new. What is new is the increasing amount of people smuggling going on across the border. Papuans who live along this southern coastline have long had traditional links with the people of Torres Strait in Australia and those across the border in Papua. To them, the idea of an international border is rather arbitrary. And for locals, like former teacher Cray, Australia is just a permit away.
The Torres Strait Treaty was designed by the Papua New Guinea government and the Australian government for the people who are living in the Torres Strait Islands, which are down here. It's for the movement of the people, what they trade around this area here. They've been trading before this treaty was made, so the government could not remove there. And what they've done was that they've created a pass, a local entry permit or pass, which they could use for their movement.
Trouble is, the border permit system has long been open to abuse. So from here, Mabuduan village across to Australia, how long does it take?
It takes about 10 to 15 minutes travel on a 40 horsepower. As you can see, that's Australia there, Saibai on the furthest northern island of the Torres Strait. There's three of them, Saibai, Duan and Boigu. This is Saibai. You're now looking out from Mabuduan village.
So Australia's very close.
Very close.
And for 3,000 kina, that's about $1,500. An outsider can also take advantage of Australia's proximity. Tracking down someone who makes the hazardous trip from Daru to Australia is possible through discreet inquiries.
Okay.
Word of mouth will get you introductions to men like Titanic, an experienced boat captain with connections on both sides of the border.
They know you, do they? The Australian authorities? Have they caught you before?
I've been in Cairns for about 3 months. I was caught illegally trespassing, so I was caught in Badu Island.
Bringing guns, drugs, people?
Yeah, drugs, but they didn't find the drugs, just like suspected me.
Right. In the past, have you taken people as well?
Yeah, I do.
Titanic says Australia's Cape York is just 12 hours away.
You prefer to go at night or during the day?
I do prepare it for night because I don't trust like it's okay daytime, but with civilians there too, so they're gonna be sighted, you know, it's gonna be.
People smugglers like Titanic aren't fussy about their clients. A few weeks before I arrived in town, Titanic says he was approached by a man from the Middle East, preparing to make the run down to Australia.
What's your name? Mohammed.
And I had only been in Daru for a few days when I met a Bangladeshi called Muhammad, who was also keen to do the run into Australia.
So you came across from Indonesia?
Last time I come from the country, Bangladesh.
From Bangladesh, yeah.
Malaysia.
Okay, to Malaysia.
Malaysia to I go by road Singapore.
Okay.
Singapore to by road Indonesia.
Okay.
By road board.
Right. By boat. Okay.
All the way to Papua New Guinea.
A soldier from Papua New Guinea's Defence Force Intelligence Service confirms that many nationalities are being smuggled across the strait. This man has extensive experience along the border, and he agreed to speak to us on the condition that his identity was concealed.
Well, we have people from Pakistan, Arab, Sri Lanka, India, Africans and Vietnamese, they've been smuggled into Australia by locals. It's been done monthly. 2 to 3 people have been smuggled into Australia every month.
And it's partly Australia's fault.
The Australian surveillance boat and plane normally operates during official hours. It does its run at 10 a.m. and again in 2 p.m. It does its run only on those 2 times a day. And what about the rest of the evening? You know, it's not been monitored. Part of the problem is in the Australian side. Part of the Australian law enforcement agencies are corrupt. Federal police, customs, and Australian immigration officers are corrupt. They're part of the network.
These problems for Australian security are compounded by the fact that PNG also shares an 800-kilometre land border with Indonesia, which is equally wide open.
Strategically, it's very important. It's not just Indonesia-Australia border and PNG border. It's the Asia-Pacific border. And that's the front line for the entrance into Pacific in Australia. So the Australian government and PNG government should be more concentrating on Indonesia and Australian border instead of focusing more on Iraq.
Our PNG Defence Intelligence informant says that he and his colleagues are frustrated that not enough is being done to secure the border as well. He also says that the Australian authorities in Papua New Guinea have been supplied with reports about the illegal trade in guns, drugs and people, but the information has not been acted on.
Well, we've been giving reports to the superiors and Australian attaches in PNG, but nothing has been done to counter all these illegal activities. Maybe because there is no funds, or it's just that they don't want to do it, they just want to pile every report on their desk and all that.
The Iriu family are Papuan refugees who've lived in Daru for the past decade. They're frustrated from failing to enter Australia using both legal and illegal means.
Mr. Lo PNG mi luki mo sa me had. Me feel like Mr. Lo handle Indonesia.
This is what makes the border issue a complex one. It's not just criminals trying to cross the strait illegally, but genuine refugees too. The continuing instability in Papua and the Indonesian military build-up there is sparking a new exodus. Inspired by the recent success of her fellow Papuans to reach Australia last month, the Iriu family is likely to try again.
Yes, me thinking was a shortcut way. We must cross to the Australia. Lari, run away. We must run away.
Her brother-in-law Zed feels the same way. Stuck in Daru for the past decade, after numerous failed applications to enter Australia, he's now looking at all options.
There's a great deal and many frustration in the life of West Papuan here in Papua New Guinea, living as refugees and without clear status, living stateless and homeless and hopeless.
When my application is not success, then one day I will go to Australia, leaving this place, and go to Australia illegally using the same boat as the 43 people enter Australia.
Well, a report by Ben Bohane, and he joins us in the studio now to go over some of those issues. And can we start with those Papuan asylum seekers we saw at the end of the report? Now, a lot of people are going to say they've found asylum, they've left Papua, they're now with their Melanesian brothers in Papua New Guinea. Why should Australia accept them if they do make that illegal crossing?
Well, I think firstly we've got to remember there's nearly 10,000 refugees living along that PNG border, and they're living on little more than sago and bananas. They've been largely forgotten about. A lot of them will claim that they're still being harassed. There's still cross-border raids by both the Indonesian military and harassment from PNG officials. But most of them are sort of still there. For those that do make the effort to try and come down, I think most of them have a genuine reason for doing so. They still feel under threat.
You say they still feel under threat. Now, what sort of threat caused those people to leave Papua in the first place?
Well, I think there's been, documentation over 30 or 40 years of
But
sort
these
of ongoing...
particular people that we're talking about here?
These particular people, the Iriu family, Fien, who we've seen in the piece there, her father was killed, beaten to death by the Indonesian military. She's also married to a man who is part of the Free Papua movement. He was involved in the aborted coup there in 1984 in Jayapura. So for that particular family, they've already suffered at the hands of the Indonesian military, and they're trying to find another way.
Let's look at why some of the key figures we just saw in that report actually chose to speak out. I mean, it's quite unusual that they did, it seems to me. I mean, the defence, take first the Defence Intelligence man. You say he was speaking on behalf of others.
Yeah, look, there's a group of guys who are concerned, all serving members and part of the intelligence unit, and that particular guy was put forward to act as a bit of a spokesperson. I think there's genuine frustration in there that they're not being properly resourced, and that the reports that they provide to their superiors and to Australian officials are not being acted on. I mean, there's an 800-kilometre border with Indonesia that's been wide open for years.
Do you know why they thought there was corruption among Australian officials? Did they provide any evidence of that, or is that just something they know anecdotally?
A couple of them have actually done undercover runs themselves. They know it. They've done that network. They're part of that network. They're not involved in the network, but they know that network exists. A lot of them are actually from that part of Papua New Guinea, so they're friends and family who are involved in the trade.
What about the rascal who was claimed to have been smuggling drugs over the border, over the strait for nearly 10 years? Now, why did he agree to talk about that openly?
I've known guys in that particular settlement for a long time. And in that sort of society, they're quite open about the activities that they've done. Al, in particular, has done that run, really through the 90s and up until 2002, 2003. He hasn't done it. He's an ex-rascal now. So he felt comfortable talking about that as an ex-rascal. But it was something that, when you get into the settlements and you're prepared to sit down